Pokémon are so annoying! Well, some of them are. These are 12 of the most annoying Pokémon to deal with when playing through a Pokémon game. This list is in no particular order, except for the very last one, which is definitely the most annoying. Those of you younger viewers who've only played newer Pokémon games like Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet probably don't find wild Pokémon very annoying. What's the big deal? Just go around them. But those of you closer to my age, with sage wisdom of years gone by, likely recall the dark places and the wet places. Caves and bodies of water. I am talking about cave and surf Pokemon. Most entries will be broader categories like this, but I'll provide specific examples. Unlike dry outdoor routes, every tile of caves or water is a potential encounter spot, so you are constantly being mobbed by wild battles you don't care to participate in. Zubat, Geodude, Tentacool, and Wingull have earned places in the annoying Pokemon Hall of Fame because you're trying to just get somewhere, then diddle 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 da 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 da, you hear the Pokemon cry, you run away, take 3 more steps, diddle 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 da 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 da. It's so irritating. Repels, of course, solve this problem, assuming you have high enough level Pokemon, but early to mid-game, you may not be able to afford them. And then when they run out, you have to stop what you're doing and go into your bag and use another, assuming you're playing before they added the Repel Run Out, would you like to use another feature. Once the games went 3D, they seemed to scale back the frequency of random cave and water encounters, at least from my own impression. And of course, now Pokemon games mostly don't have random encounters at all. But if you go back to 2D, pack repels. That's not to say the newest Pokemon games are completely free from annoying wild Pokemon though. Sure, most of the time if you don't want to battle wild Pokemon, you don't have to. But Scarlet and Violet have one glaring exception. Or should I say, vaulting exception. That being Veluza. Originally, this entry was gonna be wild Pokemon that chase you, like Sneasel or Sharpedo in Scarlet and Violet. But Veluza is so much worse that it had to have this entry to itself. This stupid fish is outrageously aggressive and fast. If it sees you, it gives chase at blinding speeds, forcing you to dodge not only it, but the crowds of other Pokemon in the water. And then if it does catch you, which it likely will, you're pretty much forced to knock it out. That's because in Scarlet and Violet, running from a Pokemon does not make it disappear. So if you flee from the Veluza, it'll simply start chasing you again. And the final reason Veluza is worse than other chasing Pokemon is because of where it is. It's all over the west coast of Paldea, but the primary place it ruins your day is Casseroya Lake, the aquatic lag tree thicket. I never thought of a good lag pun name like I did for the thicket. But if you have one, let me know in the comments. Casseroya Lake, to this day, runs infuriatingly slower than other parts of the map. So when a Veluza catches you, the whole process of killing it and leveling up your team becomes even more annoying because it takes more time than it should. If you value your sanity, pretend you're in Jaws and stay out of the water. It's not just Pokemon that won't leave you alone that can be annoying though. Oddly, the opposite can also be a pain. Pokemon that flee are not very fun to try to catch. There are 3 main examples of this that I'm gonna cover. The first is Abra. In most games, wild Abra only know teleport, so if you don't catch it on the first turn, throwing a Pokeball while it's at full health, it will teleport and be gone forever. Okay, yes, there are ways to stop it, like putting it to sleep, but that's still risky and you may not have the resources to do that. Most of the time you're catching an Abra, you have 2 or fewer gym badges. The next example is roaming legendaries. There have been many over the years, and because they flee at the end of the first turn, in general, the mechanics have changed, so there have been times where they've fled sooner. They become the de facto use your Master Ball Pokemon. It's kind of annoying, but it's way worse in games that have multiple roaming legends, like Platinum, which has 5. You can only throw your Master Ball at one of them. This forces you to chase the other Pokemon all over the region and try to catch them with specific strategies to prevent them from fleeing. It's a huge pain. The final example of fleeing Pokemon is in Legends Arceus. Arceus. If there's a Pokemon you want to catch, let's say a shiny, you have a pretty good chance of doing that if the Pokemon is aggressive or neutral. You can do so out of battle, even when it notices you, but if that goes poorly, you can enter battle and try to catch it more traditionally. But some Pokemon run away when spotted, vaporizing into a puff of smoke if they get too far away. Even if you enter battle with them, they can run away and fully disappear. This is super annoying when trying to catch the Pokemon in general, but can be devastating if it's a shiny. I am less scared of trying to catch a shiny alpha than I am of a shiny tiny little baby. So, pro tip, if you hear the shiny noise, immediately save your game. It might respawn if you fail it. And speaking of that, I really miss that noise. My first shiny in Legends Arceus was a Carnivine that I only found because I heard the noise when flying overhead. It was so exciting and I would have carried on and missed it otherwise. That noise has helped me find several shinies that I otherwise would not have noticed. And then they removed it. In Scarlet and Violet, wild shiny Pokemon just look different. They do not sparkle nor make a noise when they appear. This sucks. So I am naming shiny Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet as the next annoying Pokemon on this list. If you haven't shiny hunted in these games, let me walk you through why it's so annoying. Because there is no audible marker, you are forced to stare at the screen non-stop, keeping your camera on a swivel and giving yourself an eye strain headache. You can't run too fast or you'll breeze right past one. If the shiny is a very different color, you might be fine, but if it looks really similar to the normal color, like Slowpoke or Paldean Tauros, you have to closely inspect every one. You can use auto battles, sure, they won't kill a shiny, so you can clear out the normal ones, but that's still an extra step. This all makes the process a lot more stressful and less fun than it was in Legends. Now, I know there are some explanations out there for why they removed the sound. Something about like, it has to do with the way Pokemon spawn, like there's too many and they despawn too quick, so you'd hear the noise and then the Pokemon despawns before you can see it, something like that. But I don't care. Spawn the Pokemon better. It worked in Legends Arceus. Why didn't you just do it the same in Scarlet and Violet? I do want to give a kudos to those of you who do shiny hunt regularly because I simply do not have the patience for it, especially in a game where I can't even look at a YouTube video on my other monitor. And if this video's on your other monitor right now, or maybe a TV in the background, hey, look at me, hello, you, hey, hi. I don't have anything to say, just wanted more attention. The last few entries have focused on wild Pokemon, so let's shift gears to trainer Pokemon. Years ago, I coined the phrase, if it's not 100% accurate, it's 50% accurate, to express my dismay toward Pokemon moves that had any chance to miss. Few things feel worse than doing nothing on your turn, so I am using the 100% accurate move almost every time. So when the enemy Pokemon makes it so none of my moves are 100% accurate, I want to pull my hair out. Pokemon have two ways of lowering their chances of being hit, boosting their evasion or lowering the opponent's accuracy. If your Pokemon has its accuracy lowered, switching out just clears that problem. But if the enemy Pokemon boosts its evasion with moves like Double Team or Minimize, or an ability like Sand Veil, you're likely stuck with it, thus making this entry evasiveness boosting Pokemon. Now, there are ways around this infuriating strategy. You're just not likely to have them in most playthroughs. The first is a forced switch move like Roar, Whirlwind, or Dragon Tail. Today, Roar and Whirlwind bypass accuracy checks to always hit, but in Gen 5 and earlier, they could still miss just like any other move, and thus are affected by Double Team. Dragon Tail has always been able to miss, and in fact, is only 90% accurate, and thus 50% accurate. But even ignoring their accuracy problem, who uses these? Like, Dragon Tail I get, it does damage, but like, I've never had Roar or Whirlwind on a playthrough Pokemon. The second strategy is using an attack that never misses, like Aerial Ace or Shockwave. There is a decent chance you have one of these in your party at some point, but it's far from guaranteed. You're also less likely to have one later in the game, since these moves are not very powerful and are likely to be replaced by stronger ones. Evasiveness boosting is so annoying because it takes strategy out of the battle and turns it just into a stupid luck crapshoot. There are 3 infamous boss battle examples of this that I have experienced a lot of pain with and lost to as an adult. The first is Juan's Kingdra in Emerald. It's already tough to kill since it's only weak to dragon, no fairy yet, so if it gets off a couple double teams, you may never hit it enough times to win. The second is Candace's Frostlass in Platinum. Not only does it have double team, but it has the ability Snow Cloak, which boosts evasion in the permanent hail that her Abomasnow likely set up before. If Frostlass gets up just 1 double team in the hail, a 100% accurate move goes down to 60%. It's an absolute nightmare. And this last example is from a fan game, but such a big deal that I had to mention it. We can't forget when Dr. Fuse lost to Koga's minimizing Chinook in Infinite Fusion. A battle so mentally taxing that when he finally won, "Take that, you worthless pile of garbage!" Should probably take a break for the day. Evasion can take a battle past the barrier of annoying and into difficult territory though. So let's discuss something that really is just annoying. Grinding your team before the Pokemon League. It's never been fun. In most games when doing this, the Victory Road is the go-to place. It has the highest level wild Pokemon after all. Grinding here is never particularly enjoyable, but it's generally straightforward, especially for your grass or water types, since they can easily blast through all the rock and ground types found in the cave. Well, they used to be able to. I'll never forget trying to grind my team up to battle the league in my first playthrough of Pokemon White and discovering the Boldors, what should have been easy Pokemon to blast through, all required 2 turns to KO thanks to Sturdy. This annoyed me so much that Sturdy Pokemon, from Gen 5 onward, are an entry on this list. In the past, Sturdy was completely useless. It made the Pokemon immune to the very small group of one-hit KO moves: Fissure, Horn Drill, Sheer Cold, and Guillotine. But in Gen 5, they buffed it, so it still does what it used to do, but also functions like a built-in Focus Sash. If the Pokemon would be knocked out from full health in 1 hit, even by a regular move, it instead lives with 1 HP. Look, I understand Sturdy needed a boof. Look, I understand that Sturdy needed a buff. It was genuinely terrible before, but this buff has personally annoyed me. Now, so many Victory Road Pokemon like Graveler, Onix, Lairon, and Boldor now require 2 hits to KO, when previously 1 Surf would do the trick. It's not changing the fate of the battle, it's just doubling the time it takes. Sturdy Pokemon also become a pain in boss battles too. Marshall's Sock or Olivia's Probopass come to mind as particularly annoying. You could argue this is more difficult than annoying, but considering these Elite Four members and their full restores, you could end up having to land a hit strong enough to one-shot like 4 times to actually beat the Pokemon. No Sturdy, and they're not so darn annoying. Sturdy's a more modern annoyance, so let's go back and cover one that's old. I won't spend too much time on this since I discussed it in my 12 broken battle mechanics that I'm glad are dead video, but this one is just so annoying that I have to discuss it again. Binding moves like Whirlpool or Wrap damage the target, then trap them for a few turns, dealing recurring damage. The duration and damage per turn have changed over the years, but that's not important for this. What is important is that today, bound Pokemon can still move. But in Gen 1, both the user and the target are forced to sit there for several turns while the attack plays out. You're just watching, like 5 turns happen and you can't do anything. This makes any Pokemon with a binding move in Gen 1 a nightmare to fight. I have played through Gen 1 a single time. In a particular battle with a Wrap-using Bellsprout. I originally wrote Rapping Bellsprout, but that is not what it was doing. Scarred me so badly that I still shudder when I think about it to this day. It took like 10 times longer than any battle should. Thank Arceus, they fixed that quickly in Gen 2. Speaking of being trapped in battle, there are other ways that can happen. You can use moves like Block or Mean Look, and of course there are abilities that do this too. Magnet Pull traps Steel types, and Shadow Tag traps all Pokemon. except ghost types, which have been immune to trapping since Gen 6. Using these to your advantage could help you catch roaming Pokemon like I mentioned earlier, but they're super annoying when turned against you. You could of course be Perish trapped by Wolfie VGC, but in normal playthrough gameplay, it's far and away the most common and most annoying when it's just a random wild Pokemon. You're on your merry way, running from any wild Pokemon in your path, until suddenly you cannot run. This entry is not about the trapping methods I've already mentioned though. The moves give you a chance to run first, Magnet Pull only works on Steel types, and very few wild Pokemon have Shadow Tag. I'm not covering these to instead focus on the most common occurrence of this, Arena Trap Pokemon. Diglett, Dugtrio, and Trapinch all have Arena Trap, which traps all Pokemon that are not floating, or ghost types after Gen 6 as mentioned earlier. It's only 3 Pokemon that have this ability, but they are far more common than the other trapping situations, appearing in many places across many games. Trying to get through Diglett's cave or the Hoenn Desert can be so irritating, since if a single Diglett or Trapinch shows up that has Arena Trap, you're likely forced to deal with it. You cannot lead with your electric type, because if it doesn't have a wide move pool and it gets trapped, you may not even be able to damage the Diglett. I don't want to pretend like these burrowing Pokemon are the only annoying trapping ones though. There are 2 specific Pokemon that deserve their own entry. They're nowhere near as common in the wild, in fact being quite rare, but when you encounter them, they can be far more damaging. Wynaut and Wobbuffet. They have Shadow Tag, which traps you into the battle as I've already mentioned, and that of course is annoying on its own, but then because of their movesets, you are now stuck in a gambling with your life mode. Will they use Safeguard and do nothing? Or will they use Counter or Mirror Coat, which could do nothing if you pick the right type of move, or could obliterate your Pokemon if you fail to knock the Wobbuffet out? Or will they use Destiny Bond, killing your Pokemon no matter what if you kill the punching bag? Every turn could be completely safe or the end of your Pokemon, which makes them so horrible to deal with in Randomizer Nuzlocke. What?
Why did you speak?
How did it?
My happiness! No!
Another specific Pokemon earned its place on this list long ago, because dealing with it in just one game made it one of my least favorite Pokemon of all time. And I'm not talking about Miltank. Whitney's Miltank is just brutally difficult. This Pokemon is more of a nuisance, a constantly reappearing one. That Pokemon is Watchog in Unova. The first Watchog you encounter in Black and White is Lenora's. Hypnosis can completely lose you the battle if it lands, and it can still do a ton of damage with Retaliate too. This battle made me start to dislike Watchog, but it was after this battle when it really drove me nuts. Watchog's Gen 5 level up moveset has Hypnosis, Confuse Ray, and Super Fang all in succession. So many Watchog you fight will have all 3 of these extremely annoying moves. Not only could you go to sleep, but you'll get confused while you sleep. So you wake up, hurt yourself, then get put back to sleep. And then on top of that, even if you have a super defensive rock or steel type, its HP gets halved with 1 Super Fang, forcing you to use potions after almost every Watchog fight. You're never gonna lose to it, but fighting it is just so grating. And you're gonna fight it a lot because Plasma Grunts love this thing. 14 Grunts have it before the league. You see this stupid thing so many times, and every time it's a pain. A lot fewer Grunts have it in Black 2 and White 2, and it's barely been in any other games since. But in Black and White, do not go through those games without a good fighting type, because otherwise, Watchog is gonna ruin your day. This final entry before the most annoying of all focuses not on wild Pokemon or Pokemon you battle against, it's trainer Pokemon you battle with. Let's see if you're familiar. Does this image trigger any kind of emotion in you? Annoyance, irritation, violent malice? If just seeing this pisses you off, then you know this entry is NPC raid partners. but mostly Martin's Soul Rock. This mostly applies to Sword and Shield. Raids are in Scarlet and Violet, but in my experience, I don't notice bad raid partners as much since everyone is moving at once. But in Sword and Shield, since you all take turns, you can see exactly what your partners are doing. Some are solid, but others are just too weak. Pikachu, Magikarp, and Togepi mostly stink. Sure, they might help, but they die so easily once they use up their focus sashes. So they will often lose you the raid even if your Pokemon stay healthy. It is insane that they let them be partner Pokemon in higher star raids. But Martin's Soul Rock is on another level of annoying. All these two do is cosmic power, cosmic power, cosmic power, boosting defenses, never helping defeat the boss. If they use a damaging attack, it makes international headlines. I think they probably intentionally made raid NPCs kinda bad to encourage you to play with other people, but sometimes I don't wanna deal with that. Especially if I'm playing the game years after it was the most recent one. So I'm trying to avoid one hassle, and you stick me with another. An old man and his stupid rock. And now for the final entry, the most annoying kind of Pokemon in my experience. Before I cover it though, if you've watched this far, consider subscribing to the channel. It seems you don't find me annoying. I hope. Trying to catch legendary Pokemon is always generally annoying. The chances are just so low for most of them, and thus much of it comes down to luck. But there are things that can make it worse. I already discussed roaming legendaries, but there's another category. Imagine you spend time whittling down a legend's health, maybe all the way to 1 HP using False Swipe. Maybe the legend has good defenses, so it takes quite a while. You're finally ready to just huck Pokeballs until you succeed, and then the legendary heals itself back up. Legends that heal are by far the most annoying Pokemon to deal with. Here are 3 specific examples, each getting progressively worse. In Gen 3, all 3 members of the Weather Trio will know Rest if fought at level 70. So that's Groudon and Kyogre in Post-Game Emerald and every Rayquaza fight. This fully heals them and sure, puts them to sleep, but it's only a brief nap of 2 turns. Now you might be thinking, oh, just stall out Rest's PP. It only has 5. And you're right, you could stall out its PP, but it does not have 5. It does today, but until Scarlet and Violet, Rest had 10 PP. So it's gonna take you a while to do that. The next example is Mewtwo in Gens 1 and 3, plus Lugia and Ho-Oh in Gen 2. They all infuriatingly know Recover, healing up half of their health immediately. Like Rest, you can stall the PP, but again, Recover only has 5 in Gen 9. It had 10 for a while, but in Gens 1 to 3, when these battles occur, it had 20. It would take ages to stall that out, because it's 20 turns, but it's not using Recover every time. These 2 examples are both super annoying, but in theory, you can stall out the healing move's PP, maybe by using Spite, so it may take a while, but you can do it. But this final example, by far the worst type of legendary healing, is the kind that never ends. Kyogre in Alpha Sapphire, Palkia in Shining Pearl, and Tapu Fini in the Alola games all know Aqua Ring. With just 1 use of the move, they begin to regain 1/16 of their max HP every turn for the rest of the battle. They get harder to catch at the end of every turn. You cannot throw a Pokeball when it has 1 HP unless you do so before the first use of Aqua Ring. Sure, you can use Heal Block, but that only lasts 5 turns. And if you mess up once, Aqua Ring is getting set up. Side note, because I know someone's gonna mention it, Xerneas does have Ingrain when trying to catch it in Sword and Shield, but that's in Dynamax Adventures. So it's affecting the battle when trying to defeat it, but it is not affecting the chance to catch. I chose to make Healing Legends the top spot on this list because the first time I encountered an Aqua Ring Legendary, Tapu Fini in Pokemon Sun, this is how the battle ended.
You are terrible, and I am going to now use my Master Ball on you because this is the most annoying battle I've ever had.
And there you have it. Can't get more annoying than the most annoying battle I've ever had. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, check out my video that I mentioned, 12 broken battle mechanics that I'm glad are dead. There's some really insane stuff in there, and it's absolutely for the best that they are not in the game anymore.